Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Great. Great to be here. Love it.
Good to have you. So let's dive in, right? Accenture is a great partner, strategic partner of Era. You guys are doing a great job every day with our customers. So thank you for that, first of all, and thanks for the partnership. You've been working a lot on decision intelligence and decision automation. So let's dive in. We're seeing increased complexity in supply chains today. So walk us through a little bit how you define and describe that complexity.
Well, in today's world, really, there's a lot of disruptions that are happening in supply chain. We see a huge amount of data, the velocity in terms of how things are changing in our industry. We have a very complex network now of suppliers. You go all the way down to the end tier if you want to supply some of those products. And it's really difficult for humans to continue to be at pace with all those changes and the velocity and the amount of data. So you will continue to see disruptions. We see disruptions all the time. We see disruptions with either man-made or nature-made disruptions in the supply chain, correct? Not going too much into the details in terms of tariffs and things like that.
That's man-made.
But it happens all the time. And really, it's companies really need to take a really close look in terms of how they're going to be able to continue to keep up with that pace, that pace of change. And we're seeing that you spoke early this morning, data is a very important element of that. We see how we want to make sure that we control as much as we can the connections and the network that we have. We want to make sure that we continue to survive in this world because we will see changes all the time. Supply chains have seen changes since early beginnings. This is not new. What we're seeing now is a faster speed of changes and disruptions, okay? So what's happening that all those human-led management processes were very linear. And now we need to make sure that we make them as parallel as we can, as automated as we can, as autonomous as we can. And really, there's nothing better than having a decision intelligence tool like Aera's to help in that process, that we can take not only the data, but only continue to augment all that power with agentic AI. And that's why the autonomy and the autonomous systems are going to be so important as we continue to transition into these next challenges in supply chain.
And you talk about survival imperative, right? So it's not a nice to have now. You think that this is a must have. So tell us a bit with that in mind, what is your vision for the supply chain in the next 5 years? What's the supply chain in 2030?
Well, in 2030, we'll continue to see more changes.
That's for sure.
That's for sure. But we need to continue to be able to create digital twins to be able to have a much first than anything, have a much better relationship with our vendors. How we make sure that as we continue to expand in terms of that end tier, those digital twins can help us to understand better what's happening with those vendors. These vendors become very disruptive. I've been working with customers where the third tier of that supply chain becomes very critical because it has the right element for the final product that I want to manufacture.
So we talked about the value chain, but what you're talking about is the value chain extends beyond the four walls of your organizations.
Correct.
To your vendors, suppliers, and to their suppliers. So yeah.
And having the data, having visibility is going to continue to help us and minimize the disruptions that we're going to see in upstream processes, okay? We see a lot of course, autonomous processes happening in manufacturing plants. We see a lot of automation happening also in warehouses, more robotics, more humanoids will also start being more in the day-to-day part of the operations. We'll see a lot of those changes being happening within the manufacturing and the warehousing part and the distribution and the fulfillment. Now, I think that the autonomous part will play even a much bigger role here because of agentic and because of all the different technologies that we're seeing being adopted by our customers. We're going to see fulfillment channels working in a much faster way, fulfillment products from any location to any customer, from any channel. And that's going to continue also to expand the complexities. This morning, Hershey said, correct, like our customers are, and not only their customers, but every customer wants to have products at their own convenience, even you, correct? So that has to continue to happen. And circular economy is going to be critical. How we're going to be able to continue to reduce usage of materials. That's happening with industries like high tech or fashion, where we want to reuse more of the products, do more recycle, reduce some of the utilization of those material, and also return processes that need to be done in a much faster and optimized way as well, correct? And then autonomous supply chain. Yes, we've been talking about autonomous supply chain for many years, and I'm sure you guys know about that. You have heard that term a lot, but I think we're getting closer and closer to autonomous supply chain because of where we are with technology and agentic, and how is that going to help us to get there. But also, one important thing to get to that 2030 is to have a decision intelligence tool like Aera's. It's very critical. And I'm not saying this because I'm sitting with you today in front of this
It's okay,
great
it doesn't
audience.
bother me.
But it's going to be necessary to have a decision intelligence tool to help that, because too many decisions, and companies keep making decisions based on old data, and that's not a good practice. So we need to break that practice, and we need to be thinking about how we're going to use a decision intelligence tool like Aera's to make decisions based on the data we have. Data-driven decisions is the most important, one of the most important elements in terms of having that vision for 2030 and beyond.
So you did a survey recently. We talked about it in London a few months back, but it's still totally valid to kind of test your assumptions. So what did the survey tell you, and can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, the survey is very interesting. We do this type of survey every 2 years. We gather and talk with around 1,000 different CEOs and supply chain leaders around the world. And we talk about, of course, autonomous supply chain and agentic. And right now, while only 25% of those customers have started to do something with agentic AI, POCs, starting to evaluate, and then I think breaking a little bit of the fear about how much is going to change, or
how much can you trust it?
How much can you trust it? And trust is a huge element. And we'll talk about trust in a minute, because that trust is really helping us to see the adoption. We talked about adoption also this morning, correct? So trust and adoption are hand to hand. But anyway, what we're seeing in this survey is that 16% of right now of the customers that are being surveyed are really doing something tangible with agentic, which is not too bad if you think about how the market is moving. If you think about agentic in general, the adoption of agentic right now is passing the threshold of 10% globally, which is huge. And if you think about that, it took e-commerce almost 24 years to pass that 10% threshold. And agentic AI, to your point this morning, is moving faster than any other technology that we have seen before. And we think that by in 5 years, that amount of adoption is going to grow from 16% to 42%, which is exactly where we want to be. And that's where we're going to see a huge, going back to the previous questions about 2030 and all the other elements that we saw, we're going to see a much faster adoption, a much faster change in supply chain and across other functions as well.
Yeah, that's the key point, right? I think it's not limited to supply chain and operation. As I think Nitin said very well this morning, it's spanning across the value chain. Yeah. This is, as I mentioned before, first time that I feel like the technology, as of now, 6 months ago, it was still a promise. When I look at our technology and what it can do now, it is ahead of what the market is actually, utilizing it for, which is the first time. I've not seen that before. Usually we're just about the same speed, or sometimes we're behind. And this time, we're actually ahead. And it's interesting because, you work for Accenture or work for Aera. There's always that nice little tension where sometimes you see the technology as a necessary evil that you have to work with. And in this case, I feel like this is different. The consulting firms, us and our clients are kind of working together, and the technology is truly the enabler of the transformation. So it's not the technology to enable a process, it's literally a technology to transform the process, which is really interesting. So talk a little about your views on how agentic AI leads that transformation.
Yeah, so before go, I think this is important just to complement this part of the story here. One thing that we're seeing with agentic AI that I think is super important is going to be how we're going to be able to improve the time to recover for those disruptions that we talked at the beginning. So that's what is fascinating about this, how we're helping companies to recover from those disruptions much faster than we have seen before. So that's, we can see a lot of other KPIs in terms of lead times and others, but how we're helping customers, I think, is fascinating. But going now to that next question, I think this is fascinating. And look, when you see this slide, and I have a 9-year-old daughter. Well, I have 3 kids, but
did she build the slide?
No. Actually,
okay. You scared me for a second.
But the happy face is because of her. But what is fascinating, correct, is like agentic or AI is not something that is happening now, correct? It's not a thing. It's something that has been evolving.
Yeah.
And she's a huge Taylor Swift fan, as you can imagine.
Me too.
So we were talking about that, and Daddy, can you talk to me a little bit about this AI thing, agentic AI? It's like, think about the Eras tour. It's like, what? Yes, think about that. It's being evolving, correct? So we're in the 4th era of AI. This is where I'm going with this, with analogies that...
I was wondering where you're going with Taylor Swift, but now I'm there.
Okay, so it's not just that, I needed to teach her a little bit of AI. So we started with, RPA processes and automation and repetitive tasks. Then we went to machine learning, correct? And then we went to Gen AI and Gen AI with RAG. And now we're in agentic AI, which is the 4th really era. And if you think the first 2, they really set the foundation for us to be more effective and be more predictive, correct? With RAG and Gen AI, we really went down to the knowledge of your data, your company data, how we can really understand your knowledge, how you're operating, how you're looking in terms of your baseball knowledge within your organization, but how can we bring that baseball knowledge and make it more available for the rest of the organization? And then agentic is really changing everything in terms of how we're operating today. We're operating much faster. It's a system that is helping us to be more resilient, be able to not only generate content like Gen AI is doing it, but it's helping us to understand and helping us to set the goals, not just what we want to do. So it's a different way of how we're operating, and this is what is fascinating.
This is what you have on that slide, where you're showing the agent teams basically doing the work, right?
Yes. And when you get into agentic and you start building agents, yes, one thing is to generate an agent, which is great, but then is to put together a multi-agentic system where you have different hierarchies and being able to transition from not just processes, functional process, but to intent process, where now the smart people like us in supply chain that have been doing this for many years, now we're super fascinated about that because now we have a much better way to understand those intentions, correct? Like you have an orchestrator, you have a super agents, you have utility agents, and all these processes that we have used before, now we're wrapping them around agents and we're making them be used in the day-to-day activities that we do within our applications or in services. So it's really important. And one of the very important here is the common language of integrating data now is really language, correct? Like we're talking about, we're simplifying the way how we communicate. Those very complex integration processes that we used to do before now are being much simplified. And I think the interoperability also is very important, key component here of making sure that we have a good outcomes from these agentic systems. And also we talk about data. Data continues to be, and I'm going to continue to harm that into our customers that data is critical to make sure that agents work and resonate and give you the value that you need.
I think your point of intent is really, really critical.
Yeah.
The ability to think about what you want the system to do, and then you prompt it to do it. And you have to organize. It's not trivial, it's not simple, but the time to value is so much greater. Talk a little bit about how you transition to autonomous successfully. I mean, you're working with clients. We heard Hershey this morning, recognize the work that you've done there, but talk a little bit about how you help your clients today transition to that new model.
Really, we have worked very closely to our customers. And I think somebody mentioned it this morning about setting the right goals, okay? And being precise about what we want to solve. But once you get to that understanding of what's your North Star and what you want to define, then you need to start narrowing down the friction process that you want to solve within your supply chain, okay? Don't boil the ocean, focus on the key process. Because why? Once you focus on that process and you build the trust brings adoption. The adoption brings innovation, and innovation brings value, correct? So that's the flying wheel that you see within all those components. But one of our very element part that is required for a successful agentic implementation is really understanding what are your data products? What are those key data components that you need to make sure that the agentic system works? That's why I love Era, because the way you have built the application in terms of you bring that data into the application is really required to what you want to solve. And that simplifies a lot of the issues that we see out there. So know your data products. Now you have your data products, now you need to put a layer of knowledge. What is the knowledge? How is that semantic layer? What are the key parts that need to understand the what's, the whys, the why we need to understand the relationship with the customers, with the vendors, with the manufacturing sites. And also, of course, once you have the semantic layer, now you need to be able to be let the agents and let these have a very federated governance of the data, so the data continue to expand and you continue to learn more and more about those different relationships that you have there. So when you bring another agent, their agent doesn't need to learn everything from the beginning. So there's more about how you build that semantic layer that is going to allow you to really scale this and not just be working in a very small solution bucket, but then you can expand horizontally to many more use cases that you want to solve with.
That's how we see the roadmaps happening and expanding so quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Brilliant. Give us a couple of examples. I mean, we've got a couple of slides here. Some examples of what you've helped, where you helped companies achieve good results.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating is that in this slide that we have been able to help customers to be more intentional about how they solve those issues. And when you go from plan to produce to make and deliver, in each of these areas, we've been able to solve and help them. So great KPIs from the initial customers that we have seen, from 40% productivity increase, which is huge, 20% reduction on cost of goods sold, and then really helping to reduce the amount of processes that you have to do within the application, right? In terms of touching a screen instead of going back and trying to figure it out and running different SQLs, but being able to have a more conversational interaction with those agents, and the prompting and delivering of that is super important. So great successes on that. Of course, you saw the success stories from your customers, our joint customers this morning, and congrats to all the customers that have been successfully implementing Era. But it's that. And another thing that I'm really excited is how we can help customers with data, okay? And how we can help customers to understand, for example, lead times, so dock to stock, lot size, safety stock, and let the agents really understand the trade-offs of how you're going to implement a lead time within an organization, correct? How are you going to be able to scale? How are you going to be able to explain? How are you going to be able to escalate and govern some of that data components that are so much needed? At the end of the day, if you have really good data that are managing your planning processes, then you're going to have a really success story. So
what's interesting about this is we talk about new types of skills and new types of use cases and taking care of the the decision that needs to be made based on data that didn't exist a few years back or even a year ago that were born in digital. So I would say decisions are born in digital need to be made, decisions that are born in digital need to be made by a digital solution. But when you talk about a lead time, you're talking about something that's as old as supply chain existed, right? So we're also tackling some more traditional problems with the technology.
Yeah, and very traditional problems, but people have not really done a really good job on continue to look at that information and the data. Correct? You implement an ERP system, you implement your lead times, and
that's it.
And that's it.
Then you touch them a year later. Yeah. So talk a little bit about the tech stack, what you see the evolution of the tech stack, and then we'll move to your conclusions.
Yeah, the tech stack.
Is that done by your daughter as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, the one left, she helped a lot. So. But it's fascinating to see the tech stack. And yeah, the tech stack can look more complex, but you really start with your data sources. Your data sources, you talk about data products, we talk about semantic layer, we talk about all that, the large language models, we talk about the agents, and then also the top of that tech stack, it has to be how you're going to keep the human in the loop, out of the loop, or on the loop, correct? Depending on how you're going to use it, correct? So, and the tech stack is going to continue to evolve as we see more a combination of automation, robots, and agentic. So we were going to see some other evolutions now that fifth era. Remember about the next album that is coming up pretty soon. But it's very important that we have all those data sources, all those layers, correct? It's not just one component. Okay. And if you think about that, if I go through all those different tech stack, and I think about Era now, going back, is how you guys process the data, not only structured data, but unstructured data.
Yeah.
How you being able to make sure that the data that is within your system is the right data that you want to learn and you want to use for your knowledge and your semantic layer, how you're going to be able to build those skills on those agents, and how you're going to be able to combine decision intelligence with agentic. I think that's a very powerful tech stack. And I think that's what you see here is like, all those different layers are required to have a very successful agentic deployment and within a decision intelligence tool like yours.
So Diego, we talked about tech, let's talk about people. How do you see the work between agents and people, tools and teammates? Talk about that, please.
It's been a very fascinating journey seeing agentic being implemented in companies. And we all been very concerned about jobs and what's going to happen with certain positions. And the surveys that not only we have done internally with our customers, but the surveys that you see out there in the market are really reinforcing the fact that agents and agentic is really complementing the work that we do. Yes, certain repetitive tasks will be modified, but it's really fascinating to see how companies are really redefining the workforce, how they're augmenting, and how they're increasing the KPIs that they expect from their own operations,
sure,
correct?
Sure.
Okay, you used to manage this number of SKUs. Now with agentics, you're going to increase the number of SKUs that you're going to manage. So KPIs are going to continue to get reinforced or improved, which is fantastic, correct? At the end of the day, their understanding, going back to the trust, their understanding based on the adoption, their understanding that innovation is driving better productivity, and they're looking really good, and we're all using the technology now on a day-to-day basis. So it's fascinating to see the combination between the new technology, to your point, that technology that is really moving fast, and I think it's moving fast because we all feel more comfortable because the most human-like technology that we have seen ever.
Yeah.
So we love to talk to it, we love to ask questions, we love to get responses, and that makes us more productive, correct? And if I ask to the audience, how many of you have used ChatGPT for?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Except me. I don't use it that much for the keynote. I told that.
Me neither. But
Diego,
this is happening, and people are really getting a lot of productivity out of it.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time, but this was super insightful. Thanks for the partnership and the great work that you guys are doing every day with our clients.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.